everybody, and welcome to another video from Froglane Studio. So today we're going to be cracking the mysteries around edge highlighting. So a key reason for doing edge highlighting is that it's going to allow those subtle details on the model really stand out. If you didn't have the edge highlighting on there, it's going to look like one flat piece from a distance. The way we go about doing edge highlighting can be broken down into three simple steps. The first point is about the brush and which part of the brush you use to contact the model. The second part is to do with actually holding the model itself and how we maneuver and manipulate that model along with the brush. And then the last part of it is about the consistency of the paints that we're going to be using. So we're going to look at all three of these topics. With applying paint to the model, it comes down to two simple processes. The first one, as you can see demonstrated on this paint holder, is when the angle that we're looking at edge highlighting is less than 90 degrees. It's quite a flat angle, and so what we're going to do is hold the paintbrush along the line that we're trying to edge highlight. This is going to mean that just the tip of the brush point is in contact with the model, and it's going to allow us to get a nice, clean, thin, straight line right down the model itself. And then the second part is when the angle is at a 90-degree angle. So this is more of a firm angle that we can use the side of the brush on. We're going to switch that brush by 90 degrees and use the middle part. It's just past the middle. You're looking at about 2/5 of the way up the brush, and that's going to allow just yet again a nice clean line across those edges. When it comes to moving the model itself, you're going to want to keep your painting hand as still as possible, braced against the other hand that's holding the model for support. That way you can turn the model to the paintbrush and you're still going to have your hand in one position, so that you're not having to alter that painting hand and end up with wobbly lines. You're really looking at those two processes, as you can see, using on 90 degrees a flat paintbrush, and then when it comes to thinly edge highlighting, you're following the edge downwards. When it comes to choosing the consistency of the paint, if you directly apply it from the pot, you get quite a thick line. So what I tend to do is either dab the paintbrush on the end of my tongue, or alternatively you can use water. That's going to give a lot more of a thin line. You don't want to water down the paints too much, but it is just about a smidge of water or medium just to improve the flow. You could even use flow aid on there if you like to get those thin small lines, as you can see. So there we have it. Those are the three key steps. Let's have a look at them in practice here. So the first step on this is this Space Marine helmet. Obviously it's quite a shallow angle, so what we're going to do is follow the line of the highlight that we're wanting to apply, and we're just using the very tip of the brush. Here you can see a slight dry brush technique that I've got going on for some reason. We're just spot highlighting all these little parts that are too small to highlight. Next we're going to move on to the other side of the eyebrow, and yet again we're just using the very tip of it and following the line of the highlight itself. Just thinly applied coats over the top. You're really just wanting to use the very tip of the brush so that you don't get too much paint on there. You don't want a thick highlight, it's got to be a very thin one, and that's why we're using just the tip. So next up we're going to have a look at the back of his backpack, funnily enough. Yet again, this is just building up those edge highlights with the very tip of the brush here. We're not wanting to get them too thick, and it's just a slow and steady pace using the very tip of the brush. And then here we're going in with the shoulder pad detail. Now when it comes to the shoulder pad detail, incidentally, you're not wanting to edge highlight right the way around it. We're trying to mimic where that light is hitting, so all you really need to do on the shoulder pads, or the traditional way of doing it on the shoulder pads, is on these two corner parts here. This one that you can see just here, it's an L there, and then on the top part here. When it comes to things like fingers, all you have to do is just run the edge of the tip over the top of the model. You don't have to kind of line highlight. We're just looking at picking up the very edges of the knuckle joints there. So most of your time on the models will actually just be this pure line highlighting that we're doing here. If you make any mistakes like I've done just there, you can quickly get your thumb or your finger and just smudge the paint off the model. It's going to allow for a less stark highlight. So you can really start to see the difference here between the two styles. The straight down approach for the less obtuse angles, and then this 90-degree approach with just the flat of the brush for 90-degree angles. Both sides of things are going to be able to give you a really sharp, crisp line, but they're both used for different applications. Incidentally, so if you were to use a lined approach for these 90-degree angles on here, what you would end up having is the brushes splitting over the angle as you followed the line highlight down. Because the angle's so obtuse, the brushes are going to split, leading to not as precise a highlight. And likewise, if you're using the flat of the brush on a really flat line that you're looking for, you're not going to get a very thin line at all. So there we have it, the mysteries of edge highlighting solved. You've got the way that the brush hits the model, so here you can see that 90-degree angle and the edge of the brush versus then the flat angles and having the paintbrush follow the lines directly down that you're wanting to highlight. And then also pivoting the model so that your brush hand stays as still and as normalized as possible. You're not wanting to kind of, crook your arm around as you're doing these edge highlights. Your painting hand just needs to be as still and as comfortable as possible so that you can get as crisp and steady lines. Your hand isn't shaking all over the place. And then the last part is down to the consistency of the paint. You don't want paint straight out of the pot. At the same time, obviously, you don't want it runny. I tend to just dip the paintbrush onto my tongue, get a little bit of saliva on there. You can use water or medium, it doesn't really matter. But all you're looking for is just a nice flowing paint that's not too thick, not too thin, just in the middle. And then it's all about time. These edge highlights take a long time to do, and building up those colours if you want to. I typically tend to use, for my ultramarines, Kelgar blue as my main highlight, and then I use what I like to call hyper highlights, which is what we're using here, which is rust grey. And that highlight just goes on the very edge of the model, and you can see as it's showing here, it will highlight the model even further. It takes it into that cartoony look. That's how I like to paint. Some people tend to like to go for the more grimdark approach. If you're doing that, then you're wanting to dull the highlights down more. But it just comes down to personal preference and personal taste and time and practice. Anyway guys, thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the video. Please let me know in the comments or by message about any topics that you want me to cover. If you have enjoyed the video, feel free to tell your friends more about Frog Lane Studio, where in future episodes we will be covering more hacks, hints, tips and tricks to ease your hobby woes. I am supported by Mighty Lancer Games, who give a massive 20% off most of the products in the range. So if you are looking for any more of the Indomitus Marines or the Primaris Marines, any of the new releases, please feel free to check out the link in the profile below. By clicking on that link, you're also helping me in supporting this channel further. So if you have been finding the streams or videos useful at all, I'd also just like to mention that the channel does have a Patreon page. If you've enjoyed or learned something, then all support is greatly appreciated, as it allows me to continue to support you guys. Channel Patreons receive various benefits, such as requesting tutorial content, hourly one-to-one hobby sessions with myself, and the more subscribers that we have, the more giveaways we can do. So if any of that does sound useful to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, please have a look at the link below. In any case, a massive thank you to my latest Patreons: Death Corpse Master, Eater of Cities, Full Circle, Honor Sanguinius, Jeans Than a Shirt, Keith, Loco Dry Dog, MDH, Midget Gems, Mogsy, Mr. Tumnus, Not There But Trying, Original Sin, Past 7 Painting, Mr. and Mrs. Ritz and Bits, Mr. and Mrs. Monkey, Stephen 101, Sonorous, The Secret Paintbrush, and of course the ever indomitable Mrs. Frog. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and everybody else out there for supporting me. I'd just like to remind you as well that I stream on Instagram every single night from 7 till 8 PM British Standard Time. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Take care, and may your brushes always be pointed.